Today on the Shrewd Dudes podcast, we're going to talk about, his most excellent Führer, like Joe Biden, and his very stupid speech that he did last week. This guy's a lunatic, but we're going to cover what pretty much everyone else has been talking about this past weekend because it was a biggie. And then we're going to talk about how many people in the States, including Karine Jean-Pierre, is being shown to be an insufferable lefty, as well as Jennifer Lawrence, who is having nightmares about the most bizarre person. Is it like a wolf? Is it vampires? No, you're going to have to find out. Also, we're going to talk about how the authoritarians in California are shutting down... not in California. In Colorado are shutting down power and choosing for you, as well as how California is a bunch of morons. And when it comes to electricity, we're going to talk about that. And finally, in some Canadian stories, we're going to talk about how Saskatchewan man is on the loose still, and the stupidity of the RCMP and how they let you know. And also, the stupidity of universities and of Justin Trudeau, our favorite dictator. All that and more on the Shrewd Dudes podcast.
Okay. It's another Tuesday news day.
Tuesday.
It is the first day that we've been doing stories in a week because last week I did not make an announcement, but I felt really, really sick. Super selfish.
Getting sick. Come on. The show comes first. The show must go on.
Yeah, doing the show like this.
Yeah,
okay.
You should have.
I think we're all right. You're just like covered in blankets. Be like, all right, today we're going to talk about
Biden. Joseph R. Biden. Kickoff.
Well, that was before the whole craziness began.
Oh, that's true. That was actually
evening, wasn't it? The show would have started like right after that speech ended.
You probably could have watched the speech and then gone on.
Yep.
But then we would have missed all the great feedback that people gave about the speech.
Mm-hmm. Yes, That's true. But before we jump into all of that, Danny, how was your weekend? The long weekend of Labor Day.
Well, I had an interesting weekend. I jumped directly into the pit of hell, which, funny enough, is downtown Calgary, which was really interesting. So I went to the Pride Parade this weekend, and it was quite the experience, I will say. I've never seen so many cries for help, in the street at one time, and people are like, "Yay!" Like drag queens on floats with little kids and children walking around dressed like animal fetishes. It was a very, very bizarre thing, and really sad to see just how many people are on board with this whole thing. It was really unfortunate, but I did have a good time yesterday. I hung out with this crazy family, and they're uncontrollable and snarky children. It was really fun. Yeah, really, really good time.
Sounds just amazing.
Oh, it was wonderful. I don't know how else to put it. They were just wonderful people, and I love that they donated all their ice cream to me. So I'm just gonna shout down all over it. Stephanie left her ice cream in my freezer. So
every time we go to your house, there's always something left.
You leave something. Yeah, you always leave something.
Mm-hmm. Anyways, so that was your weekend. My weekend. So just a brief description of what happened. On Thursday, I got to go home early.
Oh.
Yep, I got to go home early because some dunce smacked up against the support pillar on the building I was working on, and everybody had to evacuate.
Was that you?
No.
Okay. It's a good way to hide the identity.
Yep. No, it was not me. It was somebody in another company, and I think they've probably got everything sorted now, but apparently they bent the beam a couple inches off of straight.
Seriously?
Yeah.
That's a big boo-boo.
Big oops.
Big whoopsie.
Mm-hmm. And then on the weekend, Saturday, we went to Emerald Lake and Takaka Falls. So I had never even seen Takaka Falls before.
Are they big?
It's actually quite big.
Wow.
Like, before we jump into the stories, I'll actually show you. I'll see if there's a video of Takaka Falls, because it's actually really big.
Takika. I've never actually heard of Takika Falls.
Yeah, it's in Yoho National Park.
Wow, that's a long way to go. Did you take the whole family?
Yeah, we took my family, my parents, and my brother and his family.
Wow, that's a long way to go for a waterfall.
Yeah, so here, I will...
Wow, those are pretty big.
Yeah, and you can actually climb up really close up next to it. So I'll show you in this quick... I'll see if I can scroll through if this guy goes up pretty close.
Yeah, he's right there.
Of Takakao Falls. Plunging from above at a...
Yeah, so this is where we went.
That's crazy, man. That's cool. Cool waterfall.
It is. And you can walk right up to this area.
Wow.
So it's actually, because this whole area is also waterfall. It's quite nice.
You got some good pictures?
Yeah, I didn't take too many pictures, but I took a video really close to the bottom.
One of those people never takes pictures and people can't see what you're doing. Come on, man. You need to have an Instagram presence.
I'm not my wife.
It's true. Stephanie does have
she posts on Instagram quite frequently. Sometimes when we go to like Saturday brunch with her parents, both her and her sister will take like 10 seconds to take pictures of their food. I'm like,
yeah.
And I'll just be like, time for the gram? And they'll be like, shut up.
Just a supportive husband.
I know.
Yes, you are.
Such a supportive husband of my wife's Instagram.
Right. As you get smacked across the face.
Yeah. But something we should not be supportive of.
No.
Is Joe Biden and his megalomaniacal speech from Thursday.
Wait, did something happen on Thursday, Stephen?
Other than us not having a show? Apparently, yes.
Apparently we missed something important.
Apparently we missed something really crazy. So let's watch the highlights from that speech.
And now, America must choose to move forward or to move backwards.
Remaining systems will bow to the First Order!
To build a future or obsess about the past.
Blood alone moves the wheels of history!
To be a nation of hope and unity and optimism. Or a nation of fear, division, and of
raw, untamed power.
Wow.
MAGA Republicans have made their choice. They embrace anger. They thrive on chaos. They live not in the light of truth, but in the shadow of lies. But together.
The Republic will be reorganized into the first Galactic Empire!
Together we can choose a different path.
From this day forth, you put your faith in me.
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. They promote authoritarian leaders and they fan the flames of political violence. Country, you need an F-15. You need something a little more than a gun.
Actually, from a real show, from a real interview. He was basically trying to argue that Americans that argue that...
no, that wasn't an interview, that was a speech.
Was it a speech?
It was a speech, because he's like, America, like, the MAGA Republicans, like, they're always talking about their gun rights, but if they really want to take on me and the soldiers and the governments, then they'll need something more like an F-15 or an F-18, not a gun.
Yeah. Like, you're going to bomb your own people. Good call, good call.
Yeah.
The thing is, I will say this about that stupid talking point, is that people who make it, they assume that an entire war is fought out in the open fields or something like that, when it's not. Even in Russia, like the Russian invasion of Ukraine, they can use like airplanes and helicopters for like bombing runs, but then they basically have to get down into the ground and do do like door to door, like house to house kind of raids. And at that point, their entire strategy like kind of completely falls apart because then you have to fight like hand to hand, and that becomes much more difficult when you have an armed populace. So the whole thing falls apart. But yeah, so a lot of people were talking about this speech, which they should. I actually listened to the Timcast IRL. They had a live.
They covered it live, and I was listening not live, but I saw live. The. Well, no, I didn't listen to it live. I was listening to the reaction of theirs from the next morning, and I was like, "This happened."
Yeah,
I was like, "Hokey Dinah."
And it was like something on, like, I mean, we are seeing some insanely unprecedented things, like the raid on Donald Trump. That was never before done. You never go after your political opponents, both past and future. That doesn't happen in a free society, but it happened in America. And then you have President Biden go on like a national stage and pretty much declare that half the country are enemies of the state.
Yep.
Now, I mean, everything about the speech was ridiculous. Like, it was not only the content, but also the imagery. If you like watch the back of the actual, like the imagery that they used, they have like blood red as the background, and they have like two like Navy SEAL kind of like guys standing behind him, and then you have Biden on his like little podium, like pounding the actual thing like an angry man. Like people rightly so were saying like, yeah, this has shadows of like Hitler kind of like
vibes.
Well, because have you ever seen an actual live speech of Hitler during the like the all the rallies that they used to have? Have you ever seen those?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you
founded.
watch him, and he's on this big podium with these big red imagery behind him, like all the Nazi flags were dark red, and then he's going up there and he's just like railing, getting angry, like using like angry signals and all that. And Biden, most of the speech was angry. He was using his angry old man yelling at clouds voice.
Yeah,
which is crazy when you think about it. Like, this guy was all over the place. So lots of people were like mocking him. Lots of people were making like similarities. The Babylon Bee decided like, they're like, well, there's too much here to cover, so they went full on. Made a really little collage here. You want to take us through it?
Yeah. So this is just the ones which they had done just in reaction to this. So of course Biden signs non-aggression pacts with Poland, because that's always a good sign. Which is then followed by Biden announces invasion of Poland.
Oh,
so
totally unrelated. Yep.
Biden abolishes office of president and names himself Supreme Führer.
Yep.
Yeah. Biden opens camps to which to concentrate political distance and other undesirables.
Yep. I like how Biden announces new program for patriotic youngsters called Biden Youth.
Yeah.
That one sounds right.
Where is that one?
I was at the very bottom, middle bottom.
Oh.
Underneath. Yeah.
I had to pull it up.
Yeah. And then there's like Biden publishes autobiographical memoir, My Struggle.
Yep. Announces strategic alliance with Mussolini and Emperor Hirohito.
Yep. For those of you who don't know, Mein Kampf in German means my struggle. I actually did like several research papers on Hitler, and I'm like, yep. He went a little. You never go full Hitler, don't you know? Like, you just never go. Well,
the title of Michael Knowles' episode was Biden went full tyrannical dictator. You never go full tyrannical dictator.
Yeah, which is like a line from Is it
Tropic Thunder?
Tropic Thunder. It's like, you never go full Hitler, bro. Like, you went full Hitler.
You went full retard. You never go.
You went full Führer. My goodness. Now, the real question is, was this a goof, like a mistake that they screwed up, or was this like on purpose? What do you think, Steve?
I think that the imagery was on purpose, and then it was partially a goof because they didn't realize how poorly it would be taken. Because once they realized, oh my gosh, like people are actually not reacting well to this, and everybody's really getting Hitler-esque vibes and pedo Hitler vibes. Like pedo Hitler was trending on Thursday night and the Friday morning.
Yep.
And so they kind of had a little bit of a walk back the next day with Peter Ducey.
Yeah.
But then again on Labor Day, they're like, well, that's blown over. So let's just have him go again and say that MAGA Republicans and Trump are an enemy of the people.
That's all they have. That's all they have.
Yeah.
Because everything that they've done has been a gigantic disaster. I like to always say that the only thing that Democrats are good at is destroying things. That's all they're good at. That's all they can do. But it's hard to sell a political re-election campaign when all you got is destruction in your wake, and that's why they're going this way. Now, Michael Knowles had a theory. He believes that the whole point of this little fiasco was to try to like incite Republicans
reaction
to get violent.
Yep.
Because that they can work with. They can work with violence. What they can't do is work with people who are like entirely peaceful and don't take the bait.
Well, like I understand, like, because that was what their desired intent was when they raided Mar-a-Lago, was to incite a violent reaction. And there was only one person that really had a violent reaction. It was that guy who tried to raid and attack an FBI office with a nail gun.
Yeah, but even then, there's a lot of questions about like how
there were questions raised,
or even if that was a fake false flag.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So that's kind of the thing, is that conservatives and Republicans, unless in very rare circumstances, most of our reactions are with words. They're not with violence.
Yeah, they're usually very measured and very thoughtful. Like,
well, that's just because of how conservatives and Republicans, they have ingrained, or we've ingrained in ourselves, how to react to these situations, because we know, and we have known for at least a decade, that the establishment powers that be, whether that be in big tech and law enforcement, are not out to help us.
No,
they will try and get us in any way they can. And so we have to have a lot more caution and prudence in how we act. Whereas the left, they don't need to have caution. They don't need to have prudence. They can just go up to the home of a Supreme Court justice and threaten their very lives and threaten their family, and then they get to go home at night.
Yeah. It's that whole thing that we talked about before about repressive tolerance.
Yep.
Where everything that they do is completely and totally tolerated. Like somebody could literally kill a baby in the street, and they're like, "Oh, that's okay. That's no problem. It's fine. There's no problem." Oh, that was a Republican. Oh my gosh! They freak out, right?
Well, it was even that, like, the Antifa guys in Portland who said, "Yeah, there's a Trumper over here." The guy walks up, shoots him twice in the chest,
in the head, and they try to justify it.
And they try and justify it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, he was there. And that was inciting them to action. It's like him walking on the street is not inciting his own murder.
No, but that kind of points out like some of the problems with this speech was it was almost like surreal. It was like an upside down world. Everything he was accusing the Republicans and their supporters of doing is exactly what they're doing. It was the most incredible example of like projection I've ever seen. Like, you could almost track it. Everything he said like, oh, those Republicans, they're inciting violence. I'm like, that's exactly what the Democrats do.
Yeah.
Oh, those Republicans, they hate the rule of law. It's like, no, that's exactly what you hate. It's like, those Republicans, they don't respect others and they don't respect elections. Like you happen to, like everything was, it was so egregious. It was almost hard to believe that this was like, actually legitimately something that they could argue. Imagine if it's like somebody who has a reputation of like hurting and abusing animals, accusing you of being mean to dogs. That's basically what it was like. It was crazy. And obviously, like, somebody wrote this speech, but it was something else. So tell us what the liberal the liberal cover was, because you can always
cover. Yep. So MSNBC historian compares Biden's speech to Lincoln, FDR before Civil War and World War II. Of course, President Biden said the MAGA Republicans are a threat to the Constitution, intent on destroying American democracy.
Well, of course they are.
So Michael Beschloss explains Thursday that President Biden's speech in Philadelphia was inspired by presidential speeches before two of America's biggest wars. Mm-hmm. He said on All In with Chris Hayes that he had been among the historians that spoke with President Biden earlier this summer about the state of America, later suggesting it influenced Biden's speech. He recalled President Lincoln's speech and the events leading up to the American Civil War. 1860, this country was in big jeopardy, was splitting apart, a house divided. Slavery or non-slavery, and Lincoln cast the election of 1860 by saying the House cannot stand half slave, half free, we've got to choose.
You know what's interesting about that speech, though? People who actually know the history of the Civil War and President Lincoln was way more respectful and far more like balanced in his rhetoric and what he said. He did not throw everyone from the South under the bus and call them evil and malicious and all that kind of stuff. Even he didn't go that far, but Biden did. So any parallels, yeah. I'm like, no, Biden completely bucked that trend. He was not a unifier like he likes to claim. He's the opposite.
Mm-hmm. And of course, in 1940, when FDR was running for a third term, he said, look, these are all important, but what's really at stake in this moment is whether our children are going to live in America and in democracy, especially with Hitler and the fascists looming in Europe and marching.
Okay, I will say something interesting. I find that a very interesting statement that they basically took out for FDR, considering that Franklin Delano Roosevelt was a big admirer of fascism. And all through the 30s, he actually said a whole bunch of things, basically saying that he felt that America should follow the example of fascist states like Mussolini's Italy and Hitler's Germany. It was only after the Holocaust that he changed the tune. But he was quite the admirer of fascism. So I don't know about that.
Oh yeah, FDR he liked fascism, he liked socialism and communism, and he was a big proponent of eugenics.
Yes, he was.
But unfortunately, Biden decided that he would not truly walk back his claims that he made on Thursday. And he made the quote, destroying democracy. Biden doubles down on MAGA Republican criticism in Labor Day speech. Got it. President Joe Biden continued to go after MAGA Republicans and followers of former President Donald Trump in a speech Monday in Wisconsin, continuing his sharp attacks on the more conservative wing of the GOP after Republicans have broadly criticized his comments, and Trump attacked Biden over the weekend as an enemy of the state. I think Trump was actually wrong there. He should have said enemy of the people.
Yeah, that's true.
Because Biden right now is the state. I am the state.
I am the Senate.
So yeah, speaking at a rally in Milwaukee, Biden criticized the MAGA Republicans, the extreme right, the Trumpies, saying MAGA Republicans in Congress have chosen to go backwards, full of anger, hate, violence, and division. Mm-hmm. President attacked GOP lawmakers in Congress for all voting against policies he and the Democrat legislators have enacted, like the American Rescue Plan, which was just a massive waste of money, and the Inflation Reduction Act, which again was a massive waste of money. Inflation. Saying that they would have, while some supported the substance of this legislation, they couldn't let Biden have a victory. No.
Oh, yeah, the Democrats have never done that.
Yeah. Well, they did the same thing with Trump.
Yeah.
If we remember going back to early 2020 during the pandemic,
yep,
Trump sent a military hospital ship to New York.
Yep.
And the state and the city of New York said, nope. We're not going to use the hospital ship. We're going to have increased numbers of deaths. Why? Yep. Because that would give Trump a win.
Also, when Trump sent all those supplies to Costa Rica that had just suffered a hurricane? It was some kind of natural disaster. And the whoever was in charge of Costa Rica refused to basically allow anything in because it was from Trump. This is how deranged these people are. They're...
Yep.
And the worst part is that, Biden does this, and Democrats, there are Democrats out there, Democratic people who legitimately believe this stuff. They actually believe that oh yeah, he's right. The Republicans are the worst. Like it's crazy. Like people actually believe this stuff that is so far from the truth. It's impossible to not see it if you're intellectually honest.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not. It's crazy.
Yeah. So I argued that MAGA Republicans are coming for your Social Security. And criticized Ron Johnson because Johnson said that January 6th was by and large a peaceful protest, which is true.
It's true, yeah.
And so he said,
you know
not
what
every
wasn't
Republican is a MAGA
peaceful
Republican.
protest, Stephen?
Hmm?
You know what wasn't a peaceful protest?
May 29th?
Oh, you got it! May 29th. Probably the most violent, actual protest in the White House during Trump's.
Trump had to be evacuated to a secret underground bunker, and then Democrats were criticizing and laughing at him because the Secret Service escorted him there, and they're like, "Oh, you can't face against peaceful protest. You're just going to run away to a secret underground bunker." And I'm like, they burned down property next to the White House.
And the thing is, people probably don't remember that, but they probably do remember the big so-called scandal that came out of after that, which is after the police cleared the area. Trump actually went to the church that they had tried to burn, and he was holding a Bible, and he did like a photo op or something like that. I don't know how it all worked out, and that was all the media would talk about. They're like, "Oh, Trump!"
They were mad because they're like, "Oh, he cleared the park because of for a photo op," and it's like, no, they cleared the park because they were protesters who were illegally climbing on statues, and they were throwing frozen water bottles.
And they were throwing like projectiles and all sorts of other things.
Yeah,
and actually attacking
cans of soup.
Attacking.
Do you remember that?
Lovely. Yep.
It's just a can of soup for my family.
Jeez. But it is a crazy time to see. Like, this is the way I like to put it, and I like to kind of put this all together in one big kind of theme. The theme is that there's a reputation. Either you are a liar and you're a compulsive liar and you're a pathological liar, or you're an honest person. You cannot be an honest person if you cannot admit that you were wrong, or if you cannot admit that you made a mistake. The Democrats do not do that, and Biden is the perfect example of a pathological liar who will say anything to get what he wants. I saw this video today of Biden. This is like from way back. He had claimed during an interview, he claimed that when he went to Harvard, that he was the top of his class, that he got a full scholarship, that he had won some kind of award and all this other stuff. And then when they fact checked him, even like Jake Tapper, who was like CNN, who's actually supportive of Biden, even he called him on. So like, yeah, none of the sexy stuff is true. And Biden never apologized. He never apologized. He never said he was sorry. He never anything. He's just like, oh, I guess I made a mistake and all that. There was just never any accountability. The problem is we are dealing with politicians who will never apologize for their harm or their lies. Who will you have media who does the same thing. They'll lie, and they'll never ever retract or change or even admit.
Mm-hmm.
And so these are not people that you can trust. There are people you can trust who make mistakes, but then when they do, they will go right out
to it.
Like Michael Knowles and what's his name? Steven Crowder.
Yep.
Ron DeSantis will do it. Pierre Poilievre will do it. Like people that they'll actually admit, you know what? I was wrong about that. Sorry.
We will do it.
Yeah, we'll do it. If we get a story wrong or we make a mistake, that's how you know that these are trustworthy people.
Yep.
That's how you know. The Democrats, they don't do that. Hence, you cannot trust them. Anyone who knowingly and purposefully lies to you and then never admits and never turns around and be like, oh, that was my bad. I'm sorry, I won't do it again. You can't trust them. That's Biden and the Democrats. Right, Steve?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Amen. Amen, brother.
Amen.
Testify. Amen.
Testify. But that wasn't the end of Biden just being ridiculous.
Ugh.
So this is a small clip from a speech that he did yesterday about prescription costs and Medicare recipients. This is just hilarious because it's so nonsense.
For the last several decades, many of us have been trying to fix the problem. But for decades, Big Pharma tried to block giving lower drug prices for those on Medicare or anywhere else. For decades, Big Pharma won year in, year out because they owned chunks of the Congress, because they had to help, like your senior senator, Ron Johnson, who said, no, I want to say what he said. He said he opposed lowering drug costs because it would result in punishing the pharmaceutical industry. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. I mean, come on, man.
Come on.
Not this year. We beat Pharma this year. We beat Pharma this year, and it mattered. We're going to change people's lives. We finally beat Pharma. Now Medicare will have the power to negotiate lower prescription drug prices. We can guarantee no senior will have to pay more than $2,000 out of pocket for their drugs for the entire year, no matter whether the bill is $50,000. No more than $2,000. Period. For the last several.
By the way, I don't know if you heard it in his voice, Stephen. Right when he said when he beat Pharma, his voice actually cracked a little bit. He actually sounded like Grandpa Simpson. He was like, "We beat Pharma." It sounded like Grandpa Simpson when he yelled. Old man yelling at clouds.
Which I have one response to this one. Who mandated the shots, Joe? Who mandated the shots? Because guess what that did? That gave money to Pharma.
And the worst part is that do you know who's some of the biggest people who donated to the Biden campaign?
Pharma.
This guy is either the most colossal moron in the United States government, or he is just basically he's sold out so long ago that he can't even help himself. Yeah. He's like, "Oh, just tell me what to say, I'll say it." You know, like give me whatever insane thing. Oh, we want you to say we completely and totally eradicated cancer. Okay, I'll say that. It's like, oh, we want you to say you beat Pharma. Oh, also, like that's what he does. Now, Stephen, quick question. Price controls. Is there any downside to price controls? Is that if we can magically like set a magic price that everyone can afford, like why wouldn't we do that?
Because it would increase government spending substantially.
No, actually, that's not the primary problem with price controls. Be surprised. Do you know what the big problem with price controls is?
No.
You artificially lower the price below profitability, and so you basically create an immense amount of demand, and the supply does not increase. You basically create scarcity.
Yep.
Is what you do. And as a result of creating the immense amount of scarcity that you do by creating price controls, then you basically make it so that the product is cheap, but it's no longer available. People can't get it. And so as a result, you get black markets, which has happened so many times throughout history that, literally, this should have been like a lesson that I think every politician should go in Economics 101 and find out what happens when you create scarcity. Or when you price controls, it's like, yeah. So yeah. The video... I
did see the black market part coming, though.
Okay.
Actually made the text appear, and I was like typing up black market. I'm like, he's going to say black market. Then it was black market. I'm like,
black. It's racist because it's black. But go to the video from Rumble. So this was from the Dan Bon show today. They were talking about the idea of like price controls. And like, by the way, price controls are nothing new. FDR, who we talked about before, he tried to do price controls during the 30s. It was a gigantic, colossal disaster. countries all over the world have tried to do price controls as a way of artificially making it like something more affordable, but they completely and totally ignore how the free market works.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, and this is like he brought up a clip from Milton Friedman. Listen to what he says describing price controls way back in.
Well, here's Milton Friedman talking about when he was in Germany working as a representative on this trade group. Here he is talking about in Germany, how they tried price controls in Germany, and he had to go and bargain using barter for gas because what happens? What happens every time with price controls? Black markets develop. Check this out.
In the case of Germany, not after World War I, but after World War II, which was a slightly different case, right. And it shows a different facet of it. Because of Germany was then occupied by the Americans, the British, and the French, they were able to enforce price control much more effectively than a domestic government could have enforced it. And they had price control, right. Widespread price control. Mm-hmm. As a result, you didn't have inflation. You just simply had money not being used. You had barter being traded. Right. And it's funny, they used cigarettes as money. They used liquor as money, cognac. Right. I've always said it's the most liquid money you've ever had.
Everything was money. Everything was money except actual money, because money lost its value, because money is a metric of value in exchange. And when exchange is manipulated by the government that says money doesn't have value, what happens next? Rationing. What happens next? Black markets. Every single time. How many times we got to go through this, man? The beatings will continue until morale improves.
No, stop there. So basically the problem with what and by the way, this is a problem that is baked into the pie that is Democrat policies. And by the way, in Canada, these are liberal policies. What they do, they try to artificially fix problems, and they end up making the problems 10 times worse. Mm-hmm. This is what happened with inflation. They're like, oh my goodness, the economy's crashing because of COVID and the disaster we created.
Solve the problem by throwing more money into it. We created the
problem, so we're going to solve it by throwing a ton of money and printing it. Now we created inflation. We'll solve it. Let's make price more controls. Money.
Well,
that'll solve it.
First, they tried to solve inflation by throwing more money at it, and now they're trying to solve it by putting price controls on various goods and services, which of course will have the effect that he was talking about. We're already seeing massive issues in terms of like gasoline problems.
Yep.
In terms of energy prices, in terms of grocery bills.
Yeah.
And we're going to address some of those in a couple stories.
Well, like there's a humorous like a little parallel here. Did you ever see this? There's the episode of The Simpsons where I think they introduced some weird animal into Springfield and starts going nuts, and they're like, wait, what are we going to do about all these like crazy toads? Like, oh, don't worry, we've released these these eagles are going to go out there. Well, what about the eagles? Oh, don't worry, we got these snakes, and they're going to take care of them. What about the snake? What happens when the snakes get out of control? Oh, we found these mongoose that will take care. It's like every problem was solved by another thing that causes more problems. It was just like a non-stop repetition of like, we created a fire. We'll put it out by another fire. What do we do with this fire? We'll put it out with a bigger fire. It's like just non-stop, right?
Okay, it's just a brief little side point with the fire. I saw a crazy video a couple days ago. It was literally this farmer, and a fire is spreading throughout his field, and he's got the plow, or at least some cedars. I think it was a cedar, and he put the cedar down as low as he could.
Okay.
And then he just guns at full speed to create a fire break, and like the fire is like 10 feet from his tractor. And I'm like, this is nuts. But I'm like, dude, you have balls of steel.
So you created a big like pit so that the fire can't jump across?
I'll try and find this video. A little bit of a side note, but it's just so cool.
Cool idea. But the idea, again, that we want to emphasize is that, and this is sad because we're not going to cover this story today, but just as a little side note, while Steven's looking this up, in Mississippi, they had a major problem, which is there's one of the Mississippi cities. They have no water. Their water treatment plant broke down, and the people are dying because they have no water. But this was caused by complete and total ineptitude in the city government that doesn't know how to properly manage the city. But how do they get out of it? They blame racism. They're like, "Oh, it's not our fault. Systemic racism is the cause of our problems."
Yeah.
They just don't know how to solve problems.
I have a quick snippet of the video.
Ever. Whoa!
And he starts. I think at one point he starts really picking up speed.
Yeah.
Because he's creating a fire break right now.
Uh-huh.
But of course the fire is. It's a little further up. It's faster going further up.
Oh, that's crazy.
Oh no, it doesn't. I guess the clip that I had shown, it had sped up the video to make it look more intense.
Maybe.
But still, that's nuts.
That's still pretty crazy, though, to do that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they do in firefighting. In BC, they had, forest fires. They would actually, literally...
Oh, yeah, they create fire breaks.
They tear down a whole section so that the fire can't continue.
They'll also do stuff like that with controlled burns.
Yeah.
We had, I think it was back in 2020. I went with Tate. We went to this local landmark near Wainwright, which is what we called the Trestle Bridge. And it's this really, really big rail bridge.
Yeah.
For trains that was built in 1910.
Okay.
And it's I think it's 300, 400 meters long and 120 meters high.
Mm-hmm.
Big accomplishment in 1910. It probably needs to be redone because it's really rusty.
Mm-hmm.
But on the way to there, we kind of forced our way through, and they were yelling at us because we weren't technically supposed to be going through because they had a controlled fire. Just so they could have a fire break in case there was a brush fire, so they wouldn't go through everything.
Right.
And they're like, "What are you doing on this road?" And we're like, "We want to go to the Trestle Bridge. There's no other way to get to the Trestle Bridge." And they're like, "But we're doing this today." And we're like, "We can go around you." And I'm like, "Okay."
Just like that.
But anyways, yes. Trying to stop the things which they're doing to try and stem the tide of the problems that they've caused only makes things worse.
Mm-hmm.
And they really hate it when you go back and you point out the things that they've done in the past to showcase their own hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Like this story with Peter Ducey.
This is Ducey and Jean-Pierre are the ultimate, they're like Tom and Jerry. And unfortunately, Jean-Pierre's
the intelligences of Tom and Jerry were reversed.
Yeah, we're like Peter Ducey is Jerry, the mouse is always outsmarting the cat.
Well, but the thing is, of course, that the mouse is always trying to catch the rat, where Peter Ducey is always trying to catch Jean-Pierre, which is really easy.
It is.
So she's the mouse, but with with Jerry's intelligence, or with Tom's intelligence.
Yeah. Here, play
gets trapped so easily.
They have a clip, don't they?
Yeah, right here.
Yeah,
have fun. Do not play.
Oh, they have an ad? No, don't you ads.
At least it's
at least Rumble ads are not that bad.
Yeah, they're silent.
Yeah, silent.
My invention allows us to see what pets are thinking.
We were wrong.
Look, Max is buying Sonnet Home and Auto Insurance completely online.
You can save up to 20% by bundling Sonnet Home and Auto Insurance.
Who loves Sonnet? You do. Look, you do.
Take a moment, save a bundle. Visit sonnet.ca.
A follow-up about the MAGA Republican attention. So, if we're all in agreement that it is incorrect to say the 2020 election was stolen, what about the 2016 election?
Look, I'm not going to go back to where we were or what happened in 2016. We're going to focus on the here and now. We're going to focus on what's happening today, this inflection point that the president pointed out very clearly, very decisively in a few speeches about what the country needs to do at this time to bring the country together. And he believes that's where a majority of Americans are when it comes to protecting our democracy, when it comes to protecting our rights, and when it comes to protecting our freedoms. That's what we're going to talk about. That's what we're going to focus on where we are at today.
But just in trying to understand the new attention on the MAGA Republicans, you tweeted in 2016
I knew this
Trump
was coming.
stole an election.
I was waiting, Peter, when you were going to ask me that question.
Well, great. Here we go. You tweeted Trump stole elections. You tweeted Brian Kemp stole an election. If denying election results is extreme now, why was
so
it
let's be really clear. That comparison that you made is just ridiculous. I have been. No, you're asking me a question. Let me answer it.
And you said it was ridiculous.
I was talking specifically at that time of what was happening with voting rights and what was in danger of voting rights. That's what I was speaking to at the time. And here's the thing. I have said Governor Kemp won the election in Georgia. I've been clear about that. I have said President Trump won the election of 2016, and I've been clear about that. What we are talking about right now is, let's not forget what happened on.
What a moron! Oh,
I'm not a hypocrite. You're a hypocrite.
Dear God, this woman is the epitome of a black Barbie.
Mm-hmm.
Like she is just a ditzy, she has no idea how to do. It's like, hey, what about people who denied the election in 2016? Well, we're not talking about.
We're not talking about that. We're talking about the president.
We're talking about the current time because people
what about
have
your tweets in 2016 that said it was
Well, that's just a ridiculous comparison.
That's ridiculous. It's like, no. You're literally saying that anyone who questions the outcome of quote free and fair election is an extremist faction. And she's like, well, eventually I conceded when all the evidence pointed the contrary. Whereas, of course, if you look at 2020, there really isn't much evidence. There is evidence that it was not free and not fair because it was rigged. But can't say those things on big social media because they were censored.
Not allowed. Off limits.
Allowed.
These people are the biggest hypocrites. But I like what people said before. Is like when we say that they're hypocrites, we're missing the point. They are hypocrites, obviously.
They don't.
But they don't care.
We know they don't.
So really, what it is, it's not about hypocrisy. It's about hierarchy.
It's about hierarchy, and it is about arrogance and entitlement.
Yeah, they basically, it's like the parent who says, well, you said this. Like, I don't care. Just do what I say because I said so.
Yep, because I said it.
It's a power trip. They basically don't give a crap.
They don't give a flying
flip. If they're making double standards, they don't give a crap if they're even-handed, if they're justice, whatever. They will literally do anything for power, and when they're in power, they will do anything to justify their
lust.
These are not good people. These are not moral people. These are people that will kill their own grandmother if it'll give them more power. They will literally take their dog and put it in a little wood chipper if it meant that they could have more authority or power or whatever. They're pretty much everything goes in their pursuit of power. And sadly, this kind of power and this kind of lunatic way of thinking, it's not just reserved for people in politics, but it also spreads into people in popular Hollywood and other places.
Culture and society. Just as this story from the post-millennial of Jennifer Lawrence. Jennifer Lawrence's recurring nightmares about Tucker Carlson, admits to shunning conservative family members. Yeah, I never really liked J-Law. In a recent interview with Vogue, actress Jennifer Lawrence revealed she has nightmares about Fox News host Tucker Carlson, and she has to work to forgive her conservative family members. The interview, which will be published in the October edition of the magazine, Features a long conversation about motherhood, her role in movies, which frequently takes a turn into political territory. Portion of the interview took place back in June, shortly after the Supreme Court turned decisions regarding the legality of abortion back to individual states, with the writer Abby Aguirre writing, "She warned me that she was in a mood, not a bad mood exactly, but a consistently emotional one brought on by the Supreme Court decision overturning Roe. Much of her disappointment was directed at certain relatives back in Louisville, Kentucky, where she grew up, including her father. The 2016 election had torn a rift in her family. Repairing the rift has been an ongoing process, especially since Lawrence gave, I think it's supposed to be gave birth.
Gave birth.
Gave birth.
She gave birth to a deer.
Yep. She discussed with her therapist recurring nightmares she has about Tucker Carlson.
I mean, Tucker's gonna have a field day with that. Just this. That's too funny.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, like we talk about Trump derangement syndrome and things like that. It is legitimately a thing. It's not just like something we threw out there. Like, it is actually, there are people who are legitimately like so deep in the cult mindset that they have instinctual hatred and like almost like an instant reaction. Like the whole thing about being triggered is actually a thing for them, because they're so emotionally stunted and emotionally fragile that they can't even handle an opposing,
even a minor form of dissent.
It's actually quite amazing to see. Like, I run into this all the time. I run into there's that post that you were going into on Women's Rights News or something like that.
Yeah.
And the people were going off, and I'm like, you guys are just, you can't handle a different opinion. You just go nuts. You're like, hate speech, like, you're a bigot, you're hateful.
Which one was this? Because I do this a lot. So
that's all you have.
Which post was this?
Oh, this is the post on that boy who wore a gown for his prom or something like that. A red gown.
But nobody I don't really remember too many reactions to that one.
Oh, I responded a lot on that one. But anyways, people respond the way that you expect to respond, which is basically, it's always the same. It's like, we can't even imagine that anybody who disagrees could do so for a good reason. Like, you're clearly hateful, you're clearly a bigot, you're basically we could write you off right at the beginning because you can't be trusted. And this is how they operate. This is how Jennifer Lawrence operates. She can't handle even the thought that her family doesn't agree with her, and the only answer that she's ever been given is because they're evil. And the problem is that because she falls into that Hollywood elite mind virus that they all fall into, that not only do they not understand like why they believe or why they support you, they are completely incapable of convincing them, because they don't know how to make a reasonable, rational. They're just so lost. What's going on? Are you actually looking up that post?
Yep.
You couldn't help yourself, couldn't you?
Well, no, because it wasn't really my post that had the reaction.
Okay.
It was that our friend Mike had posted something about it.
Yeah.
And so that was the reaction.
Mm-hmm.
So
this is what happens.
Back to reality.
Yeah, thank you. You went on a little side note there.
Sneaky snake.
So this is how they go. So let's go to the next story. So this is Jennifer Lawrence. Let's go to the story.
Definitely a turn, but okay.
It's kind of a turn, but really what's happening, there's a mind virus that's going on, that it just seems like people are just like, oh, people are like, they're very like lost with reality. They're literally, a lot of people in Hollywood have almost gone insane. Yep. Like, this is like mental illness territory. And sadly, because this is so rampant, this is the kind of stuff that people are now putting out in Hollywood, and it's probably acceptable. I don't think these things are unrelated. And Disney has just released a cartoon that is so hellishly inappropriate. It really show you what's going on in our society. Our society is like it's become unhinged. Basically. But go on, yeah.
Disney and FX just released a cartoon for adults called Little Demon about an Antichrist child of Satan. Nothing like sitting down on the evening and tuning into a cartoon that's literally about the bastard child of Satan. Here's a trailer, which we'll watch on YouTube. Neither of us have seen this, or at least have you seen this?
No, I've not seen it.
You have?
No, I've not, no.
Okay, so live reaction for both of us.
Reaction, let's see this.
Okay, I'll turn down the volume so we can have more of a reaction.
Who's that girl? Those shoes should come with a content warning. What a waste.
New girl, say hi to the world. The sky over a local junior high has torn open.
Mom, get in! There's no more putting this off. Your dad is the devil, and you're the Antichrist.
I'm supposed to accept that you had sex with Satan or anyone?
Please allow me to introduce myself.
Come to your father, Damien. Oh, you're a girl. The future is female.
Where have you been my whole life?
The metaphysical realm. It's not hell, but it's got the essentials. Hey, everybody. This is my daughter. Kiss her ass or I'll slaughter your children.
Proud of you!
When we dated, were you inside someone's corpse?
And you had an unfinished dolphin tattoo. Don't be a snob.
She says, I lied to protect you.
She sounds like a bitch.
That's what I said.
Hey, look at me. I'm bad grandma.
What do you make of this thing? Biblical or the media?
I like things the way they were.
Get your hands off my daughter.
Our daughter.
Oh, grief. My parents are here.
I'm a chicken now.
This party just got lame.
If my parents ever show up to a party, murder me.
Okay.
That is... Oh.
That's weird.
I'm just watching that and I'm just thinking... Okay. Speaking of what we talked about before, the repressive tolerance, one of the things that goes with repressive tolerance is that you have to have extreme radical tolerance of everyone within your camp. And this is what it leads to. Like when I mentioned that I went to Pride Parade on the weekend, one of the things that really stood out to me is that because they have to tolerate everyone in their camp, everything is on the table. Everything is acceptable. You cannot reject anything of anyone that is on your side. So I saw people there with like furry costumes, like wearing like dog and animal masks and all that, and wearing like skimpy outfits with tails and that look like BDSM kind of things. What is that? It's bestiality. They're glamorizing and they're getting people ready to accept and glamorize bestiality. You have children wearing incredibly inappropriate outfits of all kinds, and that's celebrated. Why? Because you have to have incredible widespread tolerance of everything. And I think this is the next continuation of that kind of stuff. You've seen Sabrina the Teenage Witch. They made a TV show about her, and it was so...
Well, they made a new adaptation. So, like, there was a Sabrina the Teenage Witch in the 90s.
It's a cartoon.
No, it was live action, but it was really corny and kind of chintzy.
It was based on the TV show, the comic book. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really just like, oh yes, we're gonna have you like go through normal issues of being a teenager, and it's kind of quirky, and it's like not focused on like the child sacrifice and pagan ritual aspects of witchcraft. It was more just like, you have magic and now you have to deal with it.
Yeah.
It was more like a Harry Potter-esque thing.
Yeah, I'd say so. But
whereas the new one is like, oh yeah, we're gonna go into satanic rituals and we're gonna sacrifice.
It's full on like Wiccan.
It's like, whoa, no.
It's Wiccan, and that's the idea. Everything goes now, which means that, like, the occult is totally cool. Like, this is the kind of show that tells kids that, oh, you know what, it's totally cool to mess around with Ouija boards and with anything occult and with Wicca and with all these kind of things, not realizing again that these things are dangerous. Yes.
Did you just say mess around with Uyghurs?
With with Wicca.
Well, I think you had meant to say like mess around with Ouija boards.
Ouija boards, isn't that what I said?
I heard mess around with Uyghurs.
No, with Ouija boards. Ouija boards. Not at all. Well, I mean, anything goes now, so I guess you want.
The recording will tell the truth. We'll see what happens.
If I said Uyghurs, I was wrong.
I apologize to the genocided masses in China.
I meant Ouija boards.
Yes, I know.
Oh, it's brutal that this is where we are in our It really is. Anything goes.
It really is. And this sort of tolerance even means that even if people get hurt by the agenda, they'll just shrug it off because it's for the greater good. The greater good.
Well, this is actually more. These next few stories show, again, the Democrats and their propensity make things worse. By trying, their solutions are just throw fire at it.
Yeah.
That'll fix it.
Their solutions are to throw fire at the problem.
Yeah.
So, from Denver, Channel 7. Thousands of Excel customers locked out of their thermostats during energy emergency. 22,000 people lost control of the temperatures in their homes for hours. During the dog days of summer, it's important to keep your house cool. But when thousands of customers in Colorado tried adjusting their thermostats Tuesday, they learned that they had no control over the temperatures. The temperatures climbed to the 90s, which is why Tony Tallarico tried to crank up the AC. I mean, it was 90 out, and it was right during the peak period. It was hot. That's when he saw the message on the thermostat stating the temperature was locked to an energy emergency. Normally, when we see a message like that, we're able to override it. In this case, we weren't, so our thermostat was locked in at 78 or 79. Social media, dozens of Excel customers complained of similar experiences, some reporting home temperatures as high as 88 degrees. Yeah, that's nutty.
And by the way, this is what they want. Everything that they want to institute is all about, like, the fact that they want to put us in electric cars is because they can control you. They can remotely turn off your car. They can control the energy that you put in your car. All that's about. So, yeah, even the idea of like having smart homes is part of their plans. They want to be able to control everything about you. This is just like, the precursor to like later things. Even like we talked last week, Starbucks decided like, that, we're going cashless. That's not an accident. That's because they want to create a digital currency that can control you.
Well, and of course, California has just they unveiled legislation that is going to make it nigh on impossible to buy gasoline or diesel-powered engines in the next few years. And then, of course, once they announce these policies, then they're like, well, you should not be charging your electric vehicles when it's busy. Or when the grid strain is too intense. Guess what? If there's more electric vehicles, the grid is only going to get more and more intense. Our electrical grids cannot handle this. This is throwing gasoline on the fire and hoping it makes things better. So we talked even a few years ago about the California Independent System Operator, and this on Sunday had warned that it's stepping up its call for consumers to lower electricity use as a result of historic heat will put severe pressure on the grid. Requested that residents set their thermostats to a minimum of 78 and turn off all unnecessary lights and avoid using large appliances or charging their electric vehicles between 4 and 9 p.m. So it's going to get much worse, much more intense. We're facing a load forecast of such and such megawatts and energy deficits between 2,000 and 4,000 megawatts for Monday, resulting in the highest likelihood of rotating outages we've seen so far this summer. This is something that consistently happens in California And I talked about it back in 2020. I can see if I can find the video. But it's literally because the system moved to reliable energy before, and they spent 20 times more on developing technology to push for reliable energy than they did maintaining their grid. And so the reason there's so many forest fires in California is because their grid is so far in disrepair that it causes forest fires every year. And the company that all Californians are forced to pay into to have their electricity is in debt. I think it's 10 times more than the company's worth. But because it's subsidized by the Californian government, it won't go under. They're too big to fail.
It's like under Obama, I think we remember, like we heard it early on in the Trump era. Under Obama, they basically tried to subsidize solar and wind energy, and it was a gigantic disaster. None of the companies were ever profitable. The whole system was a complete total disaster. It had to be subsidized. That's the only way it could survive because it's profitable and it's not effective. Why is it that solar panels and wind turbines don't work? Because ultimately they have to put their stuff in the batteries. And unfortunately, when they have excess output, they have nowhere to put it. They just kind of like goes nowhere. And when they have less output, they basically they don't have enough to power the grid. It is the most unreliable form of a way of running a grid. And the problem is, these people are going to these morons at these these governments, these policies, these green policies that they want to like put in everywhere. They're going to get people killed, and they will do it.
They already have.
And in Europe, okay, right now in Europe, they have the we've talked about this a few times. In England, in Germany, in all these other countries, all of these like nut job policies, they're going to kill
killing people this winter.
They're going to be
people will freeze to death because of these policies.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard this, Steven. Did you hear that there was a tentative peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia early on in the whole fight? But then Boris Johnson flew out there and he basically forced who's the president of Ukraine, Zelenko. He basically like strong armed him and basically forced him not to take. So the whole Ukraine-Russia war could have been over within like I think a month.
Yeah,
and they basically wouldn't let him do it. So this is like a self-inflicted wound on the entire like all of Europe. So basically the again, the Democrats are the cause of all your problems because all they know how to do is how to destroy and how to mess things up. That's all they do. And sort of like are basically like bearing the brunt of this. And this third story, it's again more of the same. They know how to put fire. They know how to make fires. They don't know how to put fires out.
Well, when Democrats see a fire, they put on more gasoline.
That's right.
Hard up not hard up Americans, not hard up Democrats, are now taking out loans to pay for groceries using buy now, pay later apps, which offer instant credit but can charge hefty fees for late payments. Use of buy now, pay later services for basic goods is rising quickly in the United States. Apps like Klarna and Afterpay offer install payments with no interest, but they can charge hefty late fees, and critics say they lure customers into debt. More people are using BNPL services to buy groceries and dine at restaurants. Americans can even pay for a Chipotle burrito with an installment plan now. Pay later firms said they offer a better alternative to high-interest credit cards.
Yeah. You know what this is? Predatory lenders.
Oh yeah, it's predatory lenders because they know that most people, when it catches up to them, will not be able to pay.
Yeah. It's like those payday loan companies that have been like super popular for a long time. They sound attractive because like, hey, we'll cash your check and, like as long as you pay us back, you'll be fine. There's like, it sounds really good, but they basically make their money on the people that don't pay them back or don't pay them back soon enough, because then they just charge them like exorbitant fees and interest rates and all. People get like absolutely destroyed by those things.
Mm-hmm.
But it's sad because this is the state of things in the U.S. that people are so poor now they can't even buy groceries.
Well, like, and it's not. Of course, it's not just the States. Like here in
No.
Canada, since 2020, we've seen the rates of those who were, had food insecurity rise from 10% to 20%.
Yep.
And that number has not gone down. That number has likely gotten worse because the price of food is now so much higher. Like, we used to spend maximum like $450 a month for groceries. Maximum. And now it's like minimum that we spend $600 on groceries.
Everything goes up. Yep.
Everything goes up.
And the problem is that all of these problems, there's the pattern. What they do, they create the problems, and then they always blame something else. It's never their fault.
Yeah.
Like, like they create the problems, like with the inflation, but it's conservatives' fault because, out there they pose our solution, we spend it, which is only make the problem worse. But it's the darn conservatives, wouldn't let us do our bill that will solve the problem, but actually will make it worse. It's
those reckless, evil MAGA Republicans, they wouldn't sign on to an inflation reduction bill.
Exactly.
It's like,
what do you think they blame? How do you think they get around any accountability in California with the grid, the power grid? Who do they blame?
Well, they blame climate change. They blame the red states for causing the heat wave, which will cause the forest fires. And it's like, well, this happens every year, and it's been happening every year since the 50s.
Yeah.
So it's not climate change. It's your policies suck.
Yeah. But unfortunately, people keep buying this kind of garbage that they keep serving up. It's never their fault. It's never their fault. Even here in Canada, with Justin Trudeau, it's like, don't blame me for arrived candidates because darn unvaccinated. If only they'd been vaccinated, we wouldn't have to have done this. But which is all a sham because there's no number of vaccination that would have, he was going to do it no matter, but he can just easily blame the unvaccinated to make people mad at them. But really, his goal is always that way. But let's get to the story from Post Millennial, but the Saskatchewan.
So this is recent, over the weekend. So Saskatchewan mass murder suspect has decades-long criminal history, including stabbing friends with a fork. So parole board documents show that one of the two men who was wanted after a deadly stabbing spree that left 10 dead has a 2-decade-long criminal past. According to the parole board, from February, Miles Sanderson, one of the two men, used drugs regularly and said that hard alcohol would make him lose his mind. Your criminal history is very concerning, including the use of violence and weapons related to their index offenses and your history of domestic violence, said the document obtained by the court, or by the Canadian press. As of yet, the RCMP has not released an official motivation for why the stabbing spree occurred, though it is believed that some victims were targeted while others were random. Sanderson's brother Damien was the other suspect, but was found dead on Monday morning with wounds considered to be not self-inflicted. The other Sanderson brother is still being sought, and a warrant has been issued for him on several charges, including murder and attempted murder. So in August 2021, Sanderson received a statutory release from prison, but was revoked 4 months later due to violations of his parole. It's the board's opinion that he will not present an undue risk to society if released on statutory release.
So this guy him and his brother were such a threat in Canada that the RCMP basically sent out which is basically an Amber Alert to pretty much everyone. We got the alert and so basically the idea is that these guys went on a crime spree, but how did they actually hurt their how did they kill all these people? Remember?
Stabbed them.
They what?
They murdered these people by going on a stabbing spree.
Yeah. And that's the thing. We're told by Justin Trudeau that, oh, we ban the guns, all crime and all mass death incidents will stop. It's like, nope, because stabbing, and there's so many different ways to kill people. A gun is not the only way. It's not even the most popular death. I think I remember finding out, at least in the States, more people die from stabbing every year than they do from gun-related deaths. I think.
Yeah.
Hearing that stat. The idea is that you're not going to stop by doing that, but yeah. So here in Canada, we keep getting told that we're not the States. We're so much better off, and all that. But no, I'm constantly talking to them, and they're like, "Did you hear about the stabbing that happened in your neighborhood?" I'm like, what? There's a stabbing in my neighborhood? Yep, yeah. Somebody got stabbed and to the hospital and died. And I'm like, oh, like this stuff happens all the time, all around us. We're not insulated. We're just told that it, like, that we're better off or that we're different than the U.S. when we're really not. Actually, there are gang violence things that happen all the time in the city. I just don't.
You don't hear them publicly announced.
No, but they do happen. So, I mean, as much as Canada does feel like a lot safer, we still have.
Well, and of course, there'll be stuff like this that happens. So, man released following Trudeau's softened gun crime policies kills woman. Man released following JT's softened gun crime policies has killed a woman and put her husband in the hospital. The story is not perfect because the names are a little messed up. Nikita Barron was fatally shot in her Bentley in a southwest Calgary community. Her husband, Talal Fuwani, remains in the hospital. Fuwani was out on bail awaiting trial for unorganized crime charges. Court documents show a Sherwood Park man is accused of committing 9 offenses, including assaults with a weapon, pointing a firearm, possessing a permitted firearm, charges that date back to just 2 weeks before the killing. Calgary police laid charges of first-degree murder and attempted murder against Michael Tyrell Arnold. So Arnold was charged with second-degree murder stemming from a 2019 homicide of a 45-year-old man in Edmonton 2 years ago. That charge stayed after preliminary hearing for unknown reasons. Police laid the assault and firearms charges in early August, but could not locate Arnold. Warrants were issued. Warrant was not arrested. He was not arrested until August 25th. The accused also has a history of drug trafficking, breaching court conditions, and was subject to a lifetime firearms ban. So
basically, the way that they kind of put this is that Bill C-22, which was the the gun ban kind of bill that the Liberals put up, it reduced the severity on gun crimes, like illegal firearm possession, gun trafficking, discharging of fire or with intent, and also it reduced the prison time of those who use firearms and robbery. Basically, if you're a criminal who uses the gun, you're going to get a more lenient sentence. By the way, this has been done in all sorts of American cities, and with disastrous effects, because you create policies that make it easier criminals to get away with crime. Guess what happens? Crime explodes because people feel like, well, okay, there's no downside to doing these crimes, so I'm going to get them away. This is why carjackings are they're getting out of control in Democrat cities, because they won't go after carjackers. So they're like, there's people who kids who will steal like a dozen cars and they'll get caught and released again because there's no downside to carjacking. I think New York had a law that basically said, like, we're no longer going to charge people for shootouts in the streets unless the shootout leads to an actual death.
Yep.
And so, like, gangsters were like, cool, okay, we're just going to have shootouts. Like, they just felt like there's no downside. Even if they do kill somebody, this is creating a culture of injustice because criminals are let loose and law-abiding, like good people, are treated like criminals. So this is what happens. These government officials from the Canadian government, American governments, and these local state governments, they're creating criminals. and they're just all they know how to do is how to destroy, how to cause fires. They're basically like the arsonists. They're not the firefighters that they claim they are. They're the arsonists. They're causing the fires.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's happening here in Canada too. These policies, any intelligent person should be able to tell these are going to lead to problems. But our politicians are not reasonable people. They don't care. They will do whatever it takes to basically get their will done, which is, to destroy Canadian society. And that's sad. That's a really sad thing. But they're not the only ones, and I think. Oh yeah, you're gonna go to the ArriveCan stories. Tell us about this.
Yeah. So brief synopsis. ArriveCan app continues to break review records. The people love it. 26,000 more reviews in 14 days. More total reviews than Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, Apple TV, and Disney Plus combined.
This is crazy.
You got more reviews this month than Netflix has had since it came out.
Yep.
I wonder. 564,000 ratings, mostly positive. Seems legit. Nope. More popular than Facebook.
Mm-hmm. It's up there, Stephen. It's up there.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
Well, I just want to know how much the Canadian government paid for those bots. Because, nobody can look at this legitimately and say, oh, yes, there's totally 500,000 people that are reviewing the ArriveCan app and giving it an aggregate score of 4.5. No. People have said for a long time the ArriveCan app is garbage. It crashes consistently, and it does not work. There were times when it was so common that it would not work. That it'd be like, well, we can't check your ArriveCan, so are you vaccinated? And they're like, yep. And then it's like, okay.
Well,
it is what it is.
I was listening to a Andrew Lawden show, and he was talking with these two lawyers who are suing the government for like a lot of violations. There was an incident a while back. 10,000 people were declared were flagged by the app, and it was based on a glitch, not based on that they've done anything wrong, but the app screwed up, and these people were pretty much fined and all sorts of punishments and penalties. The app is a mess.
It's a disaster.
It also shows you what happens. These are people who anything goes. They will cheat. They will lie as long as it gets their way. Why do you think the Canadian government tried to basically play the system to try to get their app up? It's because again they want people to buy it. They want people to buy into the system, and they will cheat in order to do it. They're happy to cheat. That right there, if that's not a pretty obvious example of our Canadian government trying to cheat in order to convince people to do it, I don't know what is.
Well, another story that we talked about, what we're not going to be showcasing today, was an update to the whole Climate Enforcement Division. The Canadian government denied that this plan existed, even though its plans and its designs were made public. And they're like, nope, there is no enforcement division. There's never been an enforcement division. There's no plans to have an there's no new enforcement division now. It's like, this is still happening. You haven't changed any of your policies. You haven't changed your plans. You are trying to create a social credits system here in Canada. That's been the movement that we've been striving towards, at least the government has been striving towards for the past 5 or 6 years. And this, of course, was a stepping stone to it. Having a climate enforcement division. If you commit a crime against the public or a crime against the climate, driving a car-based vehicle.
I'm kind of wondering how that's going to work. What because we keep getting told there's going to be a climate lockdowns.
Yeah.
Climate emergency. I don't even know how that works. But considering how these people are liars and cheaters and authoritarians, I'm sure they'll come up with some excuse.
Well, the climate lockdowns would be, okay, you have gas rationing. You'll have gas allotments for the month. You'll have mileage allotments for the month. You'll have heating allotments for the month in terms of like the natural gas to heat your home. You'll have electricity allotments for the month. So, and of course, you could probably get more allotments if you like recycled a certain amount, or if you did such and such. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to make it so that only the elite and the establishment can live life normally, and everyone else has to bow before them to these meaningless environmental agendas that they only want the common person then and the layman to follow, because they have no intention of following them themselves.
Yeah, it's back. It's going back to what is it called? Fiefdom. You know, like when they had serfs, and they have fiefdoms.
I'm being repressed.
Yeah, we're being repressed. All that stuff. The way that system worked is the only people who had any capital or any kind of like agency were lords and people who basically the nobility owned land. As a result, they would get all these people who would basically go under land, and they would basically have like a contract, basically, where they would work their land. Most of their stuff and their produce went to the lord.
To the local lord, yep.
But the little extra that you might have, basically, like, was for you. But these people never got out of it. Was basically slavery.
Yeah.
Indenture slavery. You basically like lived and died the rule of your lords. But you had no agency. You had no power. You had nothing. It was they themselves were basically like your masters. You basically like worked yourself to death, and then your children got to live under the same system. That's what they're reinstalling, essentially.
Yep. It's not cool.
No, not cool at all, bro.
Not cool at all. But speaking of things that are not cool and utterly reprehensible, especially for an institution of higher learning, Western University, which of course is in London, Ontario, rejects academic group's invitation to debate vaccine mandate. So a planned forum to discuss WU's 3-dose vaccine mandate has been cancelled after university administration has declined to participate. Western said last week it welcomes constructive debate about its vaccine mandate, which requires students, staff, and visitors to receive COVID-19 boosters. However, an academic freedom advocacy group is criticizing the university for not wanting to engage in said debate. The Society for Academic Freedom and Scholarship said Thursday planned to hold an open dialogue about Western's vaccine policy, but was told the university was unable to accommodate the invitation. SAFS, a national academic group dedicated to open inquiry and dialogue, called Western's decision frustrating and disappointing. The administration was given the opportunity to explain why their university is alone in Ontario in its requirement of COVID-19 vaccine boosters, said spokesperson Jeff Horseman, a professor at Wilfrid Laurier University, in a press release. They refused that opportunity, and of course SAFS originally planned to hold a virtual panel about the mandate, and invited Western's provost, Florentine Strzelczyk. That's a hard one.
That's a really tough one. Strzelczyk.
Sure. And Vice President of Operations Lynn Logan to participate or offer up another administrator or faculty member to defend the vaccine mandate. According to an email chain shared with True North, Western representative declined, citing preparations for the upcoming academic year.
Oh, we're too busy.
We're too busy. Like, if they actually had a decent defense for their vaccine mandate, they could have garnered a ton of PR by hosting and having this be like a nationally televised debate.
Yeah.
But they know that their position is indefensible, and they know that all they're doing is just garnering power and control over their students.
Yeah.
And so they're like, yeah, we can't debate this, because then that will expose it for everything that it is.
Because it's about power. It's not about like reason or logic or anything like that. It's about power. The government did this thing too. Yeah. There are so many groups that basically offered to have a debate with the government. The government, like the federal government, never accepted it. The provincial governments, even here in Alberta, they were offered, hey, let's debate these things that you're talking about. They never took, because these people don't give a rat's ass about like science. It's not about the science. They say it's about the science, but it really is.
The science always leads back to the money.
Yes, it's do what we say and don't ask questions.
Don't ask questions about why Big Pharma has gained so much in the past year.
Oh, yeah.
So,
but these are dishonest people. But like this dishonesty goes all the way into like a local
and it's super unfortunate, and it's telling that True North and other conservative information sources and news sources are the ones that are commenting on this. You wouldn't find a mainstream source that's saying, "Yep, Western University is denying academic or is opposing like proper open dialogue and debate." It's like that is the point of a post-secondary university, a post-secondary institution, is to push towards truth, to push towards. It used to be.
Now,
like I remember, I attended quite a few debates at the University of Calgary in my day.
Yeah.
And nowadays, it's like, well, if you have an offensive speaker, then that triggers people, and so they can't come, and so they'll be protested. And of course, if you do it in the United States, especially at UC Berkeley, then there'll be threats of harassment and death upon you.
And then the people who are hosting the event are hit with massive, totally insane security fees. It's their fault that the
it was the same thing with the University of Calgary and the University of Edmonton. The University of Calgary wanted the pro-life group to pay, I think it was $60,000 in security fees, and they're like, "Why?" It's like, well, there'll be protests and there's been threats of violence. That's not our fault. That's because the university has rabid pro-choice and pro-abortion activists who are willing to commit violence to advance their agenda. I went to a pro-life rally when I was a student, and I had, right in front of the security officer, this woman shouting, "I'm going to find rocks to throw at them." And the security officer's like, well, please don't do that.
I hope not.
And it's like, and I'm like, you're not going to take more action, then please don't do that. Like she's literally inciting others and saying, I'm going to commit an act of violence against them. Like that is grounds for detainment. Come on, dude. Come on.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, they haven't done anything yet. I'm like, But yeah, this is the tactic. It's censor, it's silence, and when they can't censor and silence, then it's straight to violence.
Absolutely.
That actually rhymed. Censor and silence, straight to violence.
Almost by design.
Almost by design. It wasn't, I just thought it up, so.
Very nicely done. Nicely done.
I know.
Well done. Stuck the landing.
Stuck the landing. Let's talk about our final story before we sign off for the night.
Okay.
So, Smith tells Lieutenant Governor Kenny, to butt out of leadership race. Daniel Smith is telling Alberta Lieutenant Governor Salma Lakhani and Alberta Premier Jason Kenney to butt out and stop interfering in the ongoing UCP leadership race. She's also accusing Kenney of favoring opponent Travis Taves, who is Kenney's finance minister.
Yeah, that's political interference.
Yes, it is. So, Thursday, Lakhani joined Kenney in wading into the ongoing leadership contest by commenting on the Alberta Sovereignty Act, a cornerstone policy of the Smith campaign. Lakhani said she would launch an independent review before giving the bill royal assent to ensure the proposal is constitutional. Smith said the lieutenant governor made an error in judgment by interfering in the leadership race. I would ask her to retract her statements. In the same video, Smith took aim at Premier Jason Kenney, saying it's inappropriate he commented on the proposal. Smith called the Sovereignty Act nuts and said it would make Alberta a laughingstock. Kenney is mischaracterizing the bill, Smith said. I've always said that I work with constitutional lawyers to ensure what the legislation does is in full compliance with the Constitution, and the fact that he chose to weigh in to try and tip the scales in favor of his preferred candidate, Travis Taves, is obvious to everyone. Smith has asked the Taves campaign to tell Kenney to butt out of the leadership race. She then accused Kenney of creating constitutional crisis by traveling internationally and spending the taxpayer dime while he's a caretaker premier who will exit the role in 5 weeks. We want to talk about creating constitutional crisis, having a caretaker premier in a position where he's acting the way he is. That's what creating constitutional crisis. I would ask him to stop weighing in on this contest, and if he wants to continue in the position of being caretaker, in the meantime, that's exactly what you should do. Of course, the Sovereignty Act, in its proposition, would bar federal legislation deemed harmful to Alberta's interest, would enable major energy projects to be built in Alberta again, and allow Alberta to avoid federal vaccine mandates and halt gun control legislation.
Yeah.
I like that.
Me too.
I like it a lot.
Like
my brother, I don't talk about him much on the show, but he was like, the Sovereignty Act would be the worst thing for Alberta. And I'm like,
why?
Well, he was saying it's like the Alberta government cannot just declare policy that violates federal law. And I'm like,
sure can.
It should be able to. Because the federal government should have far less power. We should be a more federalist system. He's like, well, anybody but Daniel Smith. I'm in favor of Travis Taves. And I'm like, so you want to go back to exactly what happened during the age of Kenny? You want to go back to arresting pastors? You want to go back to arresting people who organize protest?
What?
That's what you want to go back to? He's like, well, it'd be better than Smith. And I'm like, no, it would not.
No,
like,
Smith is,
Smith has some problems.
Yeah.
But not nearly to the degree of Travis Taves or Brian Sheen. Like, I know the whole saga of her nominating that individual who used to be a part of the, what was it, campaign?
The NDP campaign?
One of the federal Liberal campaigns.
Well, he worked for the Liberals, and he also worked
for
the PC.
Like, I've talked to some people who are involved in the Danielle Smith campaign, and I'm like, okay, like, how are we explaining this? And it's like, well, they used to be involved in the Liberals. They still are, like, fairly center-left, but they saw what was happening during COVID. They saw what was happening during the trucker protest, and they could no longer reasonably and rationally support the Liberals and the NDP for what they did. And I'm like, okay. I don't know much of what they've done recently. I didn't like Smith's comments about wanting to, like, have a wide tent. And I'm like, no, that's not what we need to do. We need to make a party for conservative. That's why it's the United Conservative Party. Pitching a wide tent is pointless. But if the guy has truly changed, then I'm invoking kind of a wait and see what he does now.
Yeah. For me, it's like it doesn't necessarily automatically disqualify Daniel Smith, but like the people you surround yourself will really
is important.
It's important. Like, it's one of the reasons why I thought Trump made a good choice with Mike Pence.
Yes,
because Mike Pence, and it turned out to be true, that he surrounded himself with a whole bunch of that's cool. That's what you want to see, and that's the good thing. Like the Alberta, race for leader here. I mean, the federal one is pretty, like the conservative federal party. That was
fairly cut and like we're actually talking about that. Saturday, September the 10th, which is this coming Saturday. I'm having Tate over. Danny, you can come as well.
On Saturday?
Yeah, because that's when the results for the federal Conservative Party election are being announced.
Yeah.
So I was like, hey, we can have a bit of a casual stream. It'll just be like us chatting about the various candidates. It's like my dad was actually asking me on the weekend. He's like, oh, like, have you cast your ballot yet? And I'm like, nope. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm not a member of the Conservative Party anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I dropped them when Aaron O'Toole once Aaron O'Toole just lambasted social conservatives. And I was like, all right, I'm out of the Conservative Party. Bye-bye.
Yeah. I will say this, about the federal conservative. I like the way I don't know, but they did a great job of really portraying it well. And obviously they said this about in American politics. They basically said that, okay, Republicans may not be the solution, but at least they're not the cause of the problem.
And they're not currently contributing to it.
Yeah, they're not currently. They're not going to make it worse.
They're not going to make it worse. They're not going to make it much better.
Yeah,
but they're not going to make it worse.
But at least they're not constantly causing the problems that they're facing. And I think the same thing goes here in Canada. The Liberals are the cause of all our problems.
Yep.
Now the Conservatives may not necessarily be the solution. It may not be effective.
The best solution.
No, but at the very least, it's like if your house is on fire, maybe you want to get rid of the guy who keeps throwing gasoline. Because that's going to help. whether or not it solves the problem entirely, at least stop the person throwing gasoline on fire.
Yeah.
And that's the way I look at the federal, the politics right now. Like, yeah, you elect the conservatives. Maybe they won't be able to solve everything, especially considering the gigantic mess the liberals have made. But at least they're not adding to the massive pile of a bonfire that the liberals have created. And that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So here in Alberta, same thing. I don't know if Danielle Smith is going to be like the be all end all, like, solution.
Like, I admit I would take Todd Loewen over Danielle Smith.
I love Todd Loewen.
Yeah, love Todd Loewen, love his policies. I hope Danielle Smith puts him in, has him. If Danielle Smith wins, I hope she puts him into a position of prominence.
Absolutely.
Because he is very well respected and very well liked in his writing, and by a large segment of Albertans. Yep. And if she wants to kind of have an in with more right-leaning conservatives, more social conservatives, then Todd Loewen is one of the ways to get it.
Absolutely.
So
it's kind of like the same thing I feel about the Pierre Poilievre.
Pierre Poilievre less than Lewis. If Pierre Poilievre wins, then make her a minister of something. Totally.
That's right.
Because I like both of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think, of course, Pierre has a higher chance of winning, but I do like Leslie Lewis a lot better than I liked her in 2020.
I think she's definitely getting herself to a place where
she's getting her stride.
She's going to be a Candice Bergen in the future.
Yep.
And if Pierre Poilievre wins, and wins the next election and all that, I think she'll be a very prominent conservative, and I think ultimately, she could be the next prime minister.
Yep.
She has all the qualities. I think she's great.
Yeah, she's great. I like Leslie Lewis quite a bit. I like the fact that she's proposing at least mildly pro-life policies.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say if I had a ranked ballot, I wouldn't even fill in. I would probably fill in Roman Baber as number 3.
Yeah.
But I'd probably put Lewis, then Poilievre, then Baber. But we're going to talk about all this on Saturday.
Quick question.
Yes?
Quick question. Like, have you heard the rumor that supposedly Trudeau is planning a fall election because he's on his way out?
Yeah, you mentioned this.
Yeah.
You mentioned this a while ago. I didn't think it was coming. No.
Michelle Rempel went on. She's saying that there's like rumors about that. So keep an eye out for it, because I don't know. I don't know what to think, but the fact that it's being thrown out there seems like at least something worth watching. Not a guarantee, but that would be amazing if that's the case.
Well, it would be the stupidest time to call election when, the time to call an election is when your party when the opposing party does not have a leader.
Yes, but the problem is that if the reasons for the election, because the Liberal Party has lost faith in Trudeau, they'll never be able to win with him because he's lost all the luster. And if that's the case, then he might be willing to call an election just to kind of go out on his terms. That's the theory. But I'm curious, and I'm watching it. So we'll talk about it more on Saturday.
Yeah, we will. All right, so that'll be the end of today's show. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you're following us on our video platforms such as YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, and YouTube, then of course do not forget to like, follow, subscribe, comment, and tell us how we're doing. If you're following us on our text platforms such as Gitter, Twitter, Parler, and Facebook, then give us a like, give us a review, give us a comment, private message us if you want to have a special topic discussed on the show, or if you want to be a part of a certain episode. Send us all that. We'll see what we can arrange.
Mm-hmm.
And just as a little bit of a side note, we have been kind of told that we should move on from our current logo because it's a modified version of a logo which a company has made. So we're like, okay, well, we're going to respect that, and we're going to make our own. We're going to make our own logo. We're still modifying and tweaking the logo, but we have kind of a rough rendition, a rough drawing to kind of give you guys what we're looking at right now. So this is kind of an early rendering of what our logo is going to look like. My wife made it.
Mm-hmm.
She spent a lot of time working on it.
Wait, sorry. Who?
Okay, my wife made this version, which was based on an early design of Danny's.
Mm-hmm.
So my wife and Danny both contributed to this, and it's gonna be a little bit better by the time it comes out.
Mm-hmm.
But it should look pretty cool, and that'll be the logo we'll be going with for the foreseeable future.
Let's hope so. Yeah.
So if you see a change, this is why. But, all right, Danny. No, wait, it's me. I sound out everybody else.
You, come on, man. Get
all right. So we will see everybody on Thursday for our regularly scheduled live stream.
That's right.
Until then, we always like to remind you, why be rude when you can be shrewd? Have a great couple nights, and as always, God bless.
Good night, everybody.